It was a cold winter evening in 1849, and the streets of Baltimore were wrapped in fog. Gas lamps flickered weakly through the mist, and the sound of horse hooves echoed down the narrow cobblestone lanes. Inside a small wooden house at the edge of the city, something strange was happening, something no doctor could explain. The Finch family lived there. They were quiet, ordinary people. A carpenter father, a mother who sewed for the neighbors, and their only daughter, Clara Finch, a girl of 11. She was bright, polite, and always smiling. But on one November night, Clara suddenly fell ill. Her parents thought it was a fever, like so many children caught in the cold. But this was different. Her body became cold, almost lifeless, yet her eyes were open, staring into nothing. Her heartbeat slowed down so much that even the town doctor, Dr. William Harker, could barely feel a pulse. He whispered to her parents that she wouldn't survive the night. By morning, Clara had stopped breathing. The Finch family mourned quietly. In those days, people often accepted death as fate. The doctor signed the death record and left. A small coffin was prepared, and Clara was laid to rest in the town cemetery, wrapped in her favorite blue dress. But that's where the story should have ended. It didn't. 3 days after Clara's burial, strange sounds began to come from the Finch house. Her mother, Margaret, said she could hear soft knocking at night, not from the door, but from inside the walls. Her father dismissed it as grief. "You're hearing things," he said. But then the neighbors started talking too. Someone said they saw movement near Clara's grave at dusk. On the 5th night, Margaret couldn't take it anymore. She went to the cemetery alone, carrying a lantern. The fog was thick, and every step she took crunched on the frozen ground. When she reached Clara's grave, she froze. The ground looked disturbed. Margaret screamed for help. By morning, the grave was opened. What they found inside would haunt Baltimore for decades. Clara's body was gone. At first, people thought it was grave robbers, common in those days, as corpses were often stolen for medical experiments. But the way the coffin was opened seemed too clean, too careful. There were no shovel marks, no broken wood. It was as if the lid had been lifted from inside. The local police, led by Inspector James Weller, began an investigation. They questioned everyone: the doctor, the undertaker, even the gravedigger. Nobody knew anything. The Finch family became the center of gossip. Some called them cursed. Others whispered that Clara had been buried alive. Then, 1 week later, she returned. It was just before midnight when a knock came at the Finch family's door. Her father opened it, and there stood Clara, pale as chalk, wearing the same blue dress she had been buried in. Her hands were covered in dirt, her eyes distant, and her voice was barely a whisper. "Mother," she said, "I was cold." Margaret fainted instantly. Her father stepped back in horror. The girl looked alive, but something about her wasn't right. She didn't blink often. She didn't smile. Her body temperature was still unnaturally low, and when Dr. Harker examined her again, he couldn't explain it. Her heart beat only once every few seconds, and she didn't seem to need food or sleep. The town erupted with fear. Some believed she was a miracle. Others said she was cursed, a ghost trapped in flesh. Churches began to pray, and even scientists from nearby universities came to study her. For days, Clara sat silently by the window, staring at the street. She didn't talk much except for strange words that no one could understand. "It's dark there," she once said, "but it's not empty." When the doctor asked her where she had been, she simply replied, "Under the ground, but I wasn't alone." People started reporting strange things. Animals near the Finch house refused to go close. Neighbors said their clocks stopped working when Clara walked past. One night, a neighbor claimed to see a shadow moving in the Finch window, tall, thin, not human. The town grew terrified. The Finch family stopped leaving their house. A local priest tried to bless the home, but after spending just 10 minutes inside, he ran out, shaking and pale. He told the inspector, "There's something in that house that shouldn't exist." By the end of that month, the story had spread all over Baltimore. Newspapers called her the girl science couldn't explain. Reporters tried to speak to the family, but they never opened the door again. Then one stormy night, Clara disappeared. Again. When police entered the house the next morning, they found muddy footprints leading from her room to the back door. The door was open, and her blue dress was lying in the yard, soaked with rain. There was no sign of her. Only a small note left on the table. It said, "Don't look for me, it's calling." The words were written in her handwriting, but upside down, as if written from the other side of the page. The morning after Clara vanished for the second time, Inspector James Weller stood outside the Finch house. The fog was heavy, the sky gray. He looked tired. He had seen many strange things in his years as a police officer, but nothing like this. Inside, the house felt colder than usual. Dust covered everything. A half-finished meal sat on the table, as if the family had left in a hurry. The note Clara left, "Don't look for me, it's calling," still lay there. Weller picked it up carefully, studying the handwriting. It was shaky, uneven, and written backward. "What was calling her?" he whispered. Margaret Finch sat quietly in the corner, wrapped in a shawl. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "She wasn't the same," she said softly. "After she came back, she didn't eat, didn't sleep. Sometimes she just stood in front of the mirror for hours. Once I asked her what she saw. She said she saw another girl looking back." Weller frowned. "Another girl?" Margaret nodded. "She said the girl in the mirror told her to come back, to where she belonged." That sentence stayed in Weller's mind all day. Later, Weller visited the cemetery where Clara was first buried. The ground was still uneven. He noticed something odd. On the side of the grave, the dirt looked freshly moved again. When he touched it, it was warm. He called the gravedigger, old Ben, who had worked there for 30 years. Ben crossed himself before speaking. "Inspector," he said, "I've buried hundreds of people here, but I've never seen soil like this. It moves, sometimes at night, as if something underneath is breathing." Weller stared at him. "Breathing?" Ben nodded, terrified. "Yes, sir, and sometimes I hear a sound, like a child crying." That night, Weller decided to stay at the cemetery himself. He wanted proof, not stories. He brought a lantern, a notebook, and his revolver. The fog crept in again, covering everything in a ghostly gray. At midnight, he heard it. A faint humming, almost like a lullaby. It came from Clara's grave. He moved closer, his heart pounding. The sound grew louder, then the ground began to shake slightly just for a moment and stopped. Suddenly, something cold touched his hand. He looked down. A small white hand was reaching out from the dirt. Weller stumbled back, frozen with fear. The hand twitched once, then went still. By morning, the grave was empty again. The next day, Weller went straight to Dr. Harker, the same doctor who had declared Clara dead. He found the man at his office, surrounded by old medical books and strange glass bottles. "Doctor," Weller said, "I saw something last night. Something human." Dr. Harker sighed deeply. "Inspector, what if Clara was never truly dead?" "What do you mean?" The doctor opened a drawer and pulled out Clara's old medical report. "Her heart was slow, yes, but not stopped. Back then we didn't have proper instruments. Sometimes people entered a deep state, no breath, no pulse, but still alive. We called it suspended life." Weller frowned. "Then she woke up underground?" "Perhaps. But there's more," Harker said, lowering his voice. "When she came back, I took a small blood sample. I never told anyone. It didn't behave like normal blood. It was thicker. It reacted strangely to heat. It didn't dry. It moved." Weller stared in disbelief. "You mean it was alive?" The doctor nodded slowly. "Alive or something close to it. He showed Weller the glass vial. Inside was a dark red liquid that shimmered faintly, as if breathing. Then, without warning, the vial cracked. The blood inside started to boil, then vanished into thin air. Both men froze. That evening, Weller went back to the Finch house. It was silent, empty. But something drew him upstairs, to Clara's room. The walls were covered with drawings, all made in charcoal. Every drawing showed the same thing: a tall, shadowy figure standing beside a little girl. Sometimes the figure looked like a man, sometimes just a shape. But in every picture, it had no face. On the floor, he found a torn page from an old book. The text was faded, but one word stood out clearly: Elysium. He had never heard of it before. Later that night, he searched the city library. After hours of reading, he found something: a forgotten book about old European beliefs. It said Elysium was once thought to be a place between life and death, a realm where lost souls wandered until they were called back. Called back! The words from Clara's note echoed in his head. Could she have crossed into that place, and something followed her back? A week passed. Strange events began across the city. Children in nearby houses started sleepwalking, all heading toward the same direction: the old cemetery. Dogs barked at nothing. People said they saw a small girl in a blue dress walking through the streets at night, singing softly. One man claimed she knocked on his door, smiled, and said, "Have you seen my mother?" When he blinked, she vanished. Inspector Weller was now desperate. He met with the church priest again, the same one who had once tried to bless the Finch home. The priest trembled when he heard Clara's name. "She was marked," he said. "When she came back, she wasn't alone. There's an old belief. When the dead return, they must bring something back with them. A companion from the dark." Weller clenched his fists. "Then how do we stop it?" The priest hesitated. "You can't stop what isn't living, but maybe you can send it back." That night, Weller returned to the cemetery one last time. He carried holy water, a cross, and the same lantern from before. The air was thick with cold mist. He reached Clara's grave, but it was already open. Inside, he found not a body, but a mirror. Its surface shimmered like water, and for a second he saw his own reflection. Then Clara's face appeared beside his. "Help me," she whispered from inside the glass, "before it finds another." Then the mirror cracked and everything went dark. 3 nights had passed since Inspector Weller found the mirror in Clara Finch's grave. He had not slept since then. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, pale, scared, trapped behind the glass. He tried to tell himself it was only his imagination, but deep inside, he knew it wasn't. Something from that mirror had followed him home. Strange things began happening in his house. The temperature dropped even when the fire was burning. His clock stopped at midnight every night. And sometimes, from the corner of his eye, he saw a shadow move. A small figure. A girl. On the 4th night, he woke up to the sound of whispering. It came from the hallway. When he got up and walked out, he saw muddy footprints on the wooden floor, small ones, like a child's. They led to his study. The door was half open. Slowly he pushed it wider, and there she was. Clara stood near his desk, her blue dress torn, her skin pale as moonlight. She turned her head slowly, her dark eyes hollow. "Why didn't you help me, Mr. Weller?" she whispered. Weller froze, unable to speak. She took one step forward, and suddenly her voice changed, deeper, colder, almost not human. "You opened the door. Now it wants more." Then she vanished, leaving only the smell of earth and candle smoke. By morning, Weller was shaking. He went straight to the church to see the priest again. The old man listened in silence, then said, "You saw her, didn't you? It's not her anymore. What you saw is what came through her." Weller's voice cracked. "Then what is it?" The priest opened an old leather book. "A lurker," he said. "A being that feeds on unfinished souls. It hides behind mirrors, waiting for someone to cross the line between life and death. Clara was the bridge. You must destroy the object that binds it, the mirror you found." But Weller shook his head. "The mirror broke that night." The priest stared at him, his face turning pale. "Then it's no longer trapped." That evening, Weller returned to the Finch house, hoping to find some clue. The house was silent, the air thick with dust. As he entered Clara's room, he noticed the walls had changed. The charcoal drawings of the faceless figure now looked alive. The shadows seemed to shift when he moved his lantern. And in the center of the room, where the mirror once stood, was a small puddle of dark water. He bent down to look closer. The water reflected not his face, but Clara's. She looked calm now, almost peaceful. Then her lips moved. "He's here." A cold wind blew through the room, snuffing out the lantern. Darkness swallowed everything. Weller reached for his gun, but it was useless against what came next. A tall, thin figure rose from the shadows, its face hidden in fog, its eyes glowing faintly red. The air grew heavy. Every instinct in Weller's body screamed to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The figure spoke, not in words, but in thoughts that filled his mind. She opened the way. "Now you keep it open." Weller forced himself to speak. "Leave her alone! Take me instead!" There was silence, and then a sound, soft laughter, echoing like wind in a tunnel. "You already belong to me!" Suddenly the door burst open. The priest had come, holding a burning cross. He shouted prayers, his voice trembling. The light from the cross hit the figure, and for a moment it screamed, a deep, horrible sound that made the windows crack. Clara's voice cried out too, begging, "Close it, please close it." Weller realized what she meant. The puddle of dark water. It was the gateway. He grabbed the priest's bottle of holy water and threw it onto the floor. The water hissed and began to glow, turning bright white. The creature shrieked again, its body twisting in pain. The entire room shook. Clara appeared one last time, standing beside Weller. She looked at him with sad eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "Tell my mother I'm free now." Then she touched his hand and vanished into light. When it was over, the house was quiet again. The walls were empty. The puddle had dried into dust. The priest knelt down, breathing heavily. "It's done," he said. "She's gone." But Weller wasn't so sure. He felt something cold still moving in the air, something unseen. A week later, the Finch family left Baltimore. They never returned. The old house remained empty for years. Children said they could hear a girl humming if they passed too close at night. Inspector Weller tried to return to his normal life, but he couldn't escape what he had seen. He resigned from his post, his health slowly fading. People said he was haunted. Some even claimed they saw him talking to someone invisible. Before his death, he left behind a small journal. The last line read, "The mirror never broke. It only changed shape." Years later, in 1863, new tenants moved into the Finch house. Among the things left behind in the attic was a small hand mirror. Its glass was cracked, and behind the crack was a faint reflection. A girl with dark eyes and a blue dress, smiling gently. When the new owner picked it up, the reflection smiled wider and blinked.